Welcome to the Legislators Lounge. I'm Jim Webb and my co-host is Brian Chirichiello. Today our show is the fifth show in our series, and it's on expanded gambling, or SB 152. Our guests for today's show are Senator Nancy Stiles from District 24 Hampton, and we have Jim Rubens, who's the chair of the Granite State Coalition Against Expanded Gambling, and we have Representative David Hess from Hooksett. Welcome to our show.
Thanks for inviting us.
Welcome.
Thanks for inviting us.
Welcome. And I guess we'll start with the Senator, and I know she's a sponsor of SB 152, so if you can give us a little background about what SB 152 is all about, we'll start from there.
I will, and thank you very much for inviting me. I am a co-sponsor, and I am a co-sponsor because it is non-taxed revenue to our state and will allow us to fund some of the things that have been very important to us that we have not been able to fund in the last couple of years. So it gives us that edge. And I will tell you that I belong to a retired teachers group, and every time I go to lunch, they keep saying, "When is it coming, Nancy? When is it coming? You keep promising us it'll come." I've been a co-sponsor of almost every gaming bill that has come through the House, and I think that SB 152 has been well vetted, and it addresses all of the concerns that have come up over the years. So it was successful in the Senate, and I look forward to the House doing the same.
Unlikely.
So we'll jump in. Maybe the representative from Hooksett wants to chime in. I know that you're opposing gambling, and maybe you can state some of the reasons that you do oppose it.
Sure. I've been opposed to gambling since I was in the Attorney General's office in 1974 under Warren Rubens and David Souter. As an Assistant Attorney General, one of the things that Warren Rubens assigned me to do was to investigate a woman by the name of Geraldine C. Medina out of Cleveland, Ohio, who wanted to acquire the racetrack in Belmont and start gaming proceedings. I conducted that background investigation with several other staffers in the Attorney General's office, and we submitted a report to General Rubens, and based upon that report, he refused to allow her to be licensed. I learned a lot about casino-style gambling and large-scale gambling during that exercise in 1974. In 1994, I returned to the House after a term in the 80s. And 1994, the then chairman of the Finance Committee, Channing Brown from Jim Rubens' territory up in Lebanon, got $50,000 into the state budget to study casino gambling. I wrote my first op-ed piece against casino gambling in June of 1994, and I've been opposed and have successfully been opposed to every casino gambling bill in the House since. No casino gambling bill has ever passed the New Hampshire House of Representatives. I don't expect this year to be an exception.
Okay. Well, I'd like to chime in on that one while you have opened it up here. Expanded gambling, a lot of people look, especially us over here in Derry and in the southern part of the state, we need revenue. Bottom line is we need revenue. And without some sort of way of getting this revenue, we're going to be forced into an income tax, a sales tax, or something else. And that's the biggest thing, or raising other taxes that we already have to make up this revenue. And that's a big issue for the people of Derry, who already will, as I mentioned on the floor today, we will have the highest property tax in the state of New Hampshire when they're through putting our I think it's like $3.43 per thousand that's going on this time around. Yeah. Which, you know, it kind of hits home when you see your neighbor losing their home to mortgage companies. And here we have a potential for 2,000 jobs. Right, we have a potential, this particular casino, it's in the Ways and Means Committee, and from what I understand now, it's going to be well over $500 million that's going to be invested into the southern communities or wherever this ends up going. I mean, whether it be, you know, there's talk about being over in Hudson, there's talk about being in Salem. We don't know where it's going to end up.
And Seabrook would like it as well.
And Seabrook would like it as well. But there are many communities that are saying with open arms, yes, we want this.
There's another economic point of view.
Let's
which is-
introduce yourself first.
Right. I'll introduce Jim Rubens. I was once in the state senate in the 90s, became familiar with the issue at that time because we had a casino bill come before us. I knew nothing about it at that time, and I came on as chairman of the Granite State Coalition against expanded gambling in the early 90s and have stuck with that since. It's a passion of mine. People often ask, why do I do it? I'm not paid to do this. This bill you're looking at here, Senate Bill 152, it's not going to be one casino. They're going to proliferate all over the state. Every state that goes down this rat hole winds up, the revenues don't come in as heavy as expected. There's a lot of overpromising. People think their property taxes are going to go down. You ask them in New Jersey or Connecticut whether their property taxes went down when they put gambling in. Not the case. And it's not highly regulated. And this is not going to be a high-end casino. And the problem with casinos is they don't enhance your economy, they retard your economy. They take money away from existing businesses because the casino that will wind up in New Hampshire, if we get one, will be one that will be in the shadow of the Boston casino and the Connecticut casinos. This will be a local market casino, and the money going into it will not be new money. It'll be coming out of your economy. And you're taking money out of your local restaurants, out of the Verizon Center, out of the Capitol Center for the Arts, and you're putting it into casinos. So it's a zero-sum game. The casinos do not create any skills that are transferable to other industries. They don't import any value-added products and turn them into something exportable of higher value. You're simply taking money out of the existing economy, putting it into the casino, and then there are side effects of the casino. And this is where it gets serious. Casinos are a kind of gambling we don't have in the state right now. It's slot machine gambling. And you play for long periods of time. You play once every 4 seconds. And a fraction of the population becomes addicted to the machines. And it turns out that about 60% of the revenues at a casino like the one that would wind up in New Hampshire if we get one will come from gambling addicts, and they have to get the money from somewhere. And the first thing they do is they raid the kids' college education fund, they max out in credit cards, and they begin to commit crimes. In counties that have casinos, serious, what are called FBI Index 1 crimes go up by 10%. These are crimes like violent physical assault. These include things like breaking and entering and car theft. And so when people get into trouble with gambling, it's not a large fraction of the population, but it's a big sum of money. You're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of money going through this thing. And it impacts your community.
Right.
Jim, why would you say that it's going to be more than one? The bill clearly states that it will be one. And most of the research that's been done says that the most that New Hampshire could ever host would be 2. That's the maximum. That's what they say. And as far as the money going, into this hole from all of the people, if we don't put something in New Hampshire, it's going to go to Massachusetts. Is where it's going to go. We're going to be funding Massachusetts' budget. We're still going to have those addictions that you claim that we're going to have, which I don't think we're going to have as many as you think we're going to have, and we have no money to support them.
Well, here's the problem. See, the problems with casinos relate to how close you put them to your town, your community. So if we put one in Boston, they're going to have one there. That's a 40-minute drive from the major population centers of the state. It's far enough away. Yes, we're going to lose money. We have a lot of cross-border trade with other states. In fact, New Hampshire is very advantaged by cross-border trade. We have a lot of money coming north from Massachusetts and Connecticut to us because we have an extremely strong tourist industry. We have a lot of positive things, and what we'd be doing is we'd be degrading the cross-border trade that we have right now by injuring our brand. But the question about addiction and addiction costs, when you put one in your community, the problems that would relate to from a Boston casino, and there are going to be some money going out of state to gamble there, you create worse problems. You compound the problems. And when you add up the cost of the problems and compare it to the revenue the state would get, it's a net negative for the state. So you make the net negative worse the closer you put the casino to Derry and to our state.
I'm just going to ask a quick question. We all know that there's non-profit gambling that takes place now at Rockingham Racetrack and Seabrook Dog Track.
3.
So, right, throughout 3 places. Okay.
No, there are actually 8.
Right. So what is your?
Well, 3 in my district.
No, there are 8 statewide.
So now, what is your take on that? Are you against that as well, or?
That's an entirely different operation. The amount, the take, and the amount gambled on charitable gambling would be about 1 day's worth of gambling in a casino with 3,000 VLTs
Right.
and table games. It's an entirely, the regulation is in terms of there are caps on the amount of betting that you can have. There are limits on a whole variety of things. The organizations can only have 10 games a year,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. So it's an entirely different operation.
Right. I think
there's no correlation between them.
Yeah, just my point would be, if let's say that Massachusetts brings these casinos in, the people that are actually frequenting our nonprofit gambling, they're going to go pick up and go into Boston. Now, am I going to have a
not
problem with the
necessar-
nonprofits coming to the state
Not
saying, I
necessarily.
don't have the money?
Not necessarily. And the reason is this. All of the studies, demographic studies on gambling habits of people that gamble indicate that roughly 60% of a casino's clientele comes from a drive distance of 30 minutes or less. If you have a casino at Suffolk Downs or in Revere, which are the two most likely places in northeastern Massachusetts, you have a very small percentage of the New Hampshire population that is within that 30-minute drive time. You have more in the 60 and 90-minute, but it drops off not arithmetically, but geometrically as you get more distant from a casino. If you put a casino in Rockingham or in Hudson, or at the Speedway in Loudon, which is the only other serious competitor right now, then you will see basically the end of charitable gaming in New Hampshire, because people will be close enough to the big games that they will ignore the little games.
Well, I'd like to
But
chime in.
this piece of legislation actually says that if the charitable gaming revenue goes down for charities,
They still get their
they
piece.
still have to be paid. David, when did you ever? David, when did you ever?
Only if they have to. Only if they continue their charitable gaming. And all of the operators of the halls that are holding charitable gaming say that they're going to go out of business because they can't have the clientele that will allow them to keep.
Well, that's
David,
just doesn't make
those
sense.
halls are full all the time.
Well, now
They
they
won't
are.
be after
Now
the
they
casino.
are.
They are full all the time. And when have you ever heard of a business having to pay another business because they're losing money? I mean, that's right in this statute.
Only under those criteria, and it also prohibits, it's a ban on any other charity having access to those kinds of revenues. It only addresses the charities that are currently involved in gaming.
But
and
it doesn't
and
stop
there
new
are-
ones coming
and
on.
there are waiting lists.
Well, it freezes them out of getting
Yeah.
any money, because see, the whole charitable gambling business and industry is going to be wiped out. That's, I mean, you're
No,
you're
no,
folks-
that's not true. Why would it be? This has actually encouraged them
Okay,
because
but
they can't lose
Well, that's
under
not
this
the
bill.
case. If you
not
talk
what the
with the
charities
folks,
think.
if you talk to the folks who are in those charities and who run those operations, they say we're gone in about a year. And
Why, so they don't make more money? I mean,
Well, that's
they're
why-
guaranteed to make what they're
That's
making
why
this
the
year.
hold harmless is in there, because they
Yeah.
are going to be gone. That's why the hold harmless was put in,
And it
because,
still won't protect them.
because the charities were violently opposed to a casino until that was included.
Right.
And now the charities that currently have gaming have been neutralized, but the ones that would like to be gaming are still opposed because they know they're blocked.
Well, gaming is gaming, no matter how you look at it, whether it be from a charity or whether it be from a casino.
but
We
it-
still have all the bad parts
you
of
don't.
that.
we
Not
don't
at
have
all.
slot machines. See,
And
the
this
big difference is-
40-mile thing.
You don't have slot machines.
30% of our population of New Hampshire is within 40 miles of Boston. I mean, we're only 35 miles from Boston right here in Derry. My wife works in Boston. She works in Chelsea, right next to Suffolk Downs. She drives every single day, so it isn't 30% of our population.
Yeah. Well, the
Not
people,
30% of the state's population by any stretch of the
Yeah.
imagination.
Ah, that's what I got from
the
it.
people in Maine, before Maine had casinos, there was a casino that got built in Bangor, Maine. The people of Maine were promised, well, we're losing money. People in Maine are driving to Connecticut to go to casinos. So they put a casino into Bangor, Maine. What do you think happened? There's a researcher at UMass Dartmouth, a guy named Clyde Barrows, who's been to the legislature testifying quite a bit, and he analyzes where gamblers come from every single year in New England. And the number of Mainers and the amount of Maine dollars going to Connecticut to gamble at those two casinos in Connecticut, even though they're farther away, not changed since the Bangor, Maine casino went in.
Oh, have you ever
So-
been in Bangor?
I have been in Bangor.
I could see why.
My wife's sister lives there. My wife's sister lived there.
Yeah.
And it's all Maine cars. So
Right.
this is my point, is you put a casino here in New Hampshire, it's going to be a local market casino. It's going to suck money out of your Main Street.
Well,
in
I'm
Derry.
I grew up in Salem,
Yeah.
so I'm very familiar with Salem and what goes on over the years. People come actually from Connecticut, from Massachusetts to buy their cigarettes, their alcohol,
Right.
And so, a casino in Salem, I think people would actually go and use it because they're making the trek into Salem to buy their other products that are tax-free.
The people in Salem are missing something, and I'll give. This isn't coming from me. This is coming from the people of Palmer, Massachusetts. They're likely to have. They have a decent shot of getting a Mohegan Sun casino. Massachusetts is allowing 4. Palmer, Mass. is a key location. Palmer, Mass. is, like Salem, very pro-casino. They want one. They got an interstate exit all set up for them. What they did, different than what Salem is doing, is they brought together all the town officials and they said, what will it cost the town to have a casino here? Because casinos are large operations. They have large regional impacts outside the town.
Lots of jobs.
Well,
Yeah, but you know what the jobs pay? $10.80 an hour on average. That translates to $22,000 a year. That's barely 35% of the median household income in New Hampshire.
and half to 2/3 of those jobs are coming out of your local business. But let me finish with Palmer, Mass. What they did is they calculated the cost impacts of having a casino in town. Roads, water, sewer, education, special education, fire protection, police protection. And it turned out to be $140 million of capital investment required for the town to host the casino because of the infrastructure impacts. Then they calculated the local operating budget cost impacts, $43 million a year of increased Now what they did different than Salem, they said, we want a casino here, but we're going to go into the negotiations with the casino armed with the data because we don't want our property taxes to go up. Salem is looking at this 3% dollars coming into Salem, and the towns around it have to split 1%. They're all of the property taxpayers in those towns are going underwater. Their property taxes are going up because they're going into it blind.
Right. Well, the other piece of this, and we talked about this during one of the other previous shows, that some of this money would be used to widen I-93 from basically from Wyndham to Manchester, or Derry to Manchester.
But how quickly will the legislature take that money away during the next budget?
But what I'm saying, what I'm saying is we need $250 million to get that done. Now, there's no Fed money anymore, so we have two choices. We either have gambling, a casino, or we have a gas tax. That's the way I see it. Or we don't get it
have a
done.
revenue problem.
Let me tell you, that orientation in the bill to dedicate it to those bonds is only going to last until the ink is dry. That's dedicated fund. We have been rating dedicated funds for the last 6 years. Let me give you an example of LCHIP. LCHIP was dedicated in 2009, okay? We have raised over $45 million with the dedicated LCHIP fund. You know how much money has gone into LCHIP?
I'm a realtor.
$9 million.
I understand that fully. As a real estate agent, but
Well, there's no guarantee that the money's going to go to where it wants to be.
Right.
But the bottom line is, it's money.
And it's-
that's something we
and it's
don't
and it's
have in
jobs.
this.
Yeah, but if you look at
It's
both
jobs,
sides,
even if it's low-paying jobs, Dave.
it's still
It's better
jobs.
than if you're not
Who's
working.
going to take those jobs? The people that are unemployed in Malden, in Lowell, and in Lawrence.
No, because they're not
there are
going to
very
drive that far for
Yes,
10
they
bucks
are.
an
They're
hour.
going to be within 20 miles.
this is why it's important to look at what happened in the communities around the two casinos in Connecticut. It wound up spiking property taxes in the bedroom communities around town. They brought in people who couldn't speak English because the wages are so darn low they couldn't hire locally. They spiked property taxes. English as a second language went up from just a few of languages up to 30 and 40 in the regional towns. You had hotbedding. You had to provide public transportation, social services. Property taxes went up. And local businesses, the jobs, yes, there are jobs in the casino, but they were low wage and they took away jobs from existing local businesses.
now, what about in the bill? It basically says that if they were to build a casino, they're guaranteed $400 million of infrastructure.
No, they're not. That
number
is
up
totally
higher now.
inaccurate.
Yeah.
The $400 million for minimum investment counts, first of all, the $80 million for the licensing
That's the
fee. That
license.
counts, so that's down to $320 million. The cost of buying the real estate, I don't know what Rockingham Park is worth. Let's call that $100 million. That's probably a low ball figure.
Yep.
So now you're down to $220 million. So you're starting out no more than $220 million. Here's the comparison. The Massachusetts bill requires actually a $500 billion investment in infrastructure that is going to create jobs. That first $180 million out of that $400 million won't create one job because it's not going into building infrastructure or improvements. It's going into the land and the licensing fee. That's a major problem with this bill that the Millennium would like people to overlook. But
I believe that's being
And that's only if it
It's
goes
not
in.
being
That's
addressed.
only if it goes into Salem. That's only if it
no,
goes into
no,
Salem.
that's not true. That the bill
Well,
specifies
I'm talking
that.
about, you're talking about Millennium. That's
Well,
only if it goes into Salem.
no,
If there are
it's the
other
same.
people bidding in other spots,
So far, no one else has indicated that no one has come forward and said with the timelines in the bill, they will be able to submit a bid and meet the requirements of the bill within the timeline specified. We had Green Meadows come into our, I'm on the joint committee. I've been on Ways and Means for 8 years now. And I was also chair of local and regulated revenue back in when Donna Sitek was speaker back in 2000, 2004, and I also served on that committee twice. The timelines on this bill are so irrational and so artificial. What they say is that the bill becomes effective upon passage. 60 days after that, the State Lottery Commission has to submit a request for bids. And the full bids, now there are 25 subject matters that have to be completed in an application. The completed applications have to be submitted within 90 days or by December 1. The only entity that has gotten enough of a head start on this to be able to do that is Millennium in Salem. Green Meadow came into us yesterday and told us, their lawyer told us, we can't submit a bid in that time frame. You have to extend the time frame to at least May 1st of next year for us to even have a chance. Tomorrow, we're going to hear from the only other potential bidder. Seabrook's not interested.
I know, Seabrook wants it.
Seabrook's not interested. And
They're interested.
tomorrow, the Speedway in Loudon is going to come in, I think, and tell us the same thing, because it takes millions of dollars to hire experts to do all the background. You have to submit detailed architectural plans, detailed infrastructure studies, detailed traffic studies. You have to provide, make provisions for how many people you're going to hire, what you're going to pay them, who your consultants are going to be, who your vendors are going to be. You have to, and this has to be completed information. You can't put that together
Well, what I say
in
to
90
that
days.
is shame on them. They knew it was coming, just like
Yeah.
Millennium.
It's not-
How
they
did
don't know
Millennium
it's
get
coming.
such a head start on
Because
this?
they've been at it since 2006, planning all this.
And nobody else has been interested in this?
They're
since
Been interested,
2006?
but you can't submit a bid until you see the RFP and you know what the bill requires. The other problem with this bill, if you're talking about time problems, the bill is clearly structured to give Millennium really the only possibility. So the other problem with the bill is the rules that will govern how casinos will be regulated in the state won't even be finished until after a license is issued to the company that probably prevails on the bid. The bill is designed to rush $80 million into the budget of one-time money that will wind up, I'm a Republican, it'll wind up pumping up the budget. The money goes away after a single year. It's one-time money. People have become dependent on the money, and then it's gone.
Well, just
But
the
the
licenses.
casino will be up and operating.
Well, that's also
very
ridiculously optimistic.
unlikely.
Yeah.
The quickest, the shortest timeline for a casino to be up and running after
2016.
legislation has been passed is 22 months. After the bill becomes law, and that's at a very startup level. That's at a very temporary level. If the experience in Bangor, Maine is an example where it took 5 years after the bill was passed for the casino to get up to about a 1,600 VLT level.
Yep.
2 years after the bill was passed, when they started out, I'm not going to call it a tent, but some people might, when they started out in the temporary structure, they were running 300 and 400 slot machines.
Millennium's chief economist testified before a committee that I testified at yesterday. They testified, and this is their chief economist, Millennium's, that they will not have it up to full dollar capacity, in other words, maximum stable revenue flow, until 2019. That was their own economist testifying yesterday before questioning, before the Revenue Subcommittee.
Well,
But it's still money coming in that's non-tax revenue.
Well, it's not. It
And
is a
it
tax,
provides jobs.
but it's a tax. If you read the bill, it's going to tax consumer income. That's where the money comes from. It doesn't. You have these.
Well, it's a user. It's more of a user fee if you think about it,
Well,
because it's the people
a
that are using the
tax.
casino.
Right, but it's a tax that's coming out of the New Hampshire economy. No matter what you call it, it's a tax.
we have buses leaving New Hampshire all
Daily,
the time.
daily.
Going to Mohegan Sun,
Right.
going to these
We're
Massachusetts.
losing $7 million a year of taxes.
And Massachusetts is going to be even a bigger draw, because now it's only 35, 40 minutes away.
There's no question.
this
There's
bus.
no question.
So
there's
will be a
cross-border
bigger
activity.
draw.
We either get on the boat
Yeah.
or we don't get on the boat, and then we have a problem because now it's
Yeah.
revenue that we did not collect.
But if
or
you
we
look at
didn't
both
get.
sides of the balance sheet, there's revenue. There's clearly revenue coming in from it. But if you look at the other side of the balance sheet, the jobs lost at your local restaurants, at the Verizon Center,
You know,
jobs.
I've heard that one, but you know, the Verizon, how big is this theater going to be that they're going to build? The Verizon Center is a huge place, 17,000 people.
Right,
I
when
mean,
you
they're
add
not going to
up-
build a
And
17,000
if those people are well paid at
arena.
Verizon, they're
They
not
could
going to
build a
leave to
10
go
if
somewhere
it's
else.
let me take this.
You wanna do that? Yeah,
If,
okay.
you know, they could build a 5 or a 10,000 person a venue because that's where they make a lot of their ancillary money. One expert organization that is unaffiliated with either the anti-tax people or the pro-casino people is the New Hampshire Center for Public Policy. It's located in Concord. Its board of directors are all New Hampshire citizens, including people like Alaconis from Salem. Chuck Morris was on the board at one time. They're impartial. When they did the analysis last month on the proposal contained in 152 for a 30% overall public take, 25% going to the state, their economic analysis, and assuming there is a casino in Suffolk Downs, their analysis provides that we might take in $45 million in revenue to the state in a year, but the social costs and the lost revenue from lottery, sales reductions, and other income would more than take that away, such that they project the state would actually lose $2 million in value and in services required by having that casino in Salem with a competitor in Suffolk. These guys don't have an axe to grind. They are neutral. They are impartial. People from Salem who are very pro-gambling are part of this organization.
Yeah, I mean, you're making an assumption that they're going to the Suffolk Downs Casino is going to be more desirable for somebody to go to.
Well,
it might be, say, halfway in Andover or wherever they might be. You also have to take into effect that this Suffolk Downs, because I lived in Revere. I know what Suffolk Downs is. It's not a very desirable area to be putting a casino.
They have a beautiful seacoast there that's...
What, beautiful Revere Beach?
It is. I think it's pretty darn beautiful. I've been
It's
there.
not bad. They've done a lot over there, so it isn't bad.
Sorry
but
about that.
that's not Suffolk
Digression.
Downs stuff.
Yeah.
You know what Suffolk Downs is going to see? They're going to see Beachmont train station. That's what they're going to see.
You know something? Atlantic City was a pit, a hovel, when they moved casino gambling in there. And you know something? Atlantic City is still a hovel.
Well,
Except
but
for
Right,
the,
but they
except
talking
for the-
they have a
except for the
They have
casino
boardwalk.
only
multiple- they have
35
multiple
minutes away.
sites.
That's
except,
beautiful.
except for the boardwalk. The boardwalk was doing great. Massachusetts first of all, Mass requires for the same market a $500 billion investment minimum, not counting the licensing fee and not counting the real estate. Now, why is our bill less?
Well,
Because
but-
Millennium wants it less.
But what are you saying you'd support it if it was?
No, I'm saying that why is it different? Why?
Okay.
Because Millennium is part and parcel of drafting it. I don't know, I'm not going to ask Senator Stiles who actually drafted the bill. I think I know who drafted the bill, and it wasn't anybody in OLS, in the Office of Legislative Services. But the point about investment is now Massachusetts is talking, they have 11 bidders for the 3 sites that are currently in the process. In the Suffolk Downs area, in that northeast area, the lowest bidders are talking about investing $1.2 billion. That's 4 times more than what Salem is requiring.
And it is a different economy in Boston versus Southern New Hampshire. We all know that too. But I asked at lunch, you know, if he supported gambling. He said no, and we started talking. And basically, what he told me was that if there's a squeeze of money in the state, that eventually you would have to go to an income tax. And that's the reason why he wasn't going to vote for casino gambling. And that was the first time I actually heard that.
But an income tax.
There are a lot of motivations here. I know our group, we have people who are for an income tax. We have people, most of the people in our group don't want an income tax.
Right.
But what they do, all of us agree on, is what Representative Hess said. You've got to look at both sides of the balance sheet. The people who are for this keep talking about only one side of the balance sheet. There are costs associated, property tax costs, criminal justice costs,
Well, a lot
welfare
of these costs are addressed in the bill. Like, for instance,
Right. Well,
the
they're
state
not.
troopers that are going to be in the casino and it's
Yeah,
going to
but
take care of that issue.
they
Not
address,
addressed, for example,
they
those
address,
not all those costs are included in the take from the casinos. They come
Right.
out of the general fund.
No, I get
Yeah.
that's from what I
Not
understand.
the police.
The police
State police.
comes directly from the casino.
Only the police that are actually on site.
Which is another
Your
troop.
local police don't come from the casino revenues. Derry's police,
Well-
Salem's police.
Yeah,
Well,
but when
Derry
they
would get the
just-
percentage of,
Yeah,
if
we're
it
not
goes
going
to
to get
Salem, we would.
3% neither. Like
You're going to get
1%.
one fourth of
But that's important for Derry, and I'll tell you why.
Derry's going to get whacked.
Well, we're under a tax cap. We have been for the last 13 years,
Right.
and we've got a very strong tax cap, so there's limited money that you can raise.
Right.
This is attractive because you're getting 1% of the revenues, estimated at $130 million
Yeah,
a
but
year.
that's split among a whole lot of towns that are
But
surrounding.
it's still
Surrounding
money
towns.
that's able to use to fix our roads.
Right, but when
Route
when
4,
you've
you'll
gotta
be able
look
to
at-
use it on Route 4.
It's the same. You've got to look at both sides of the balance sheet. Who pays for your increase in local police, your roads, your welfare, your social service cost, your English as a second
that's
language
actually
cost?
built
You're
into
talking
the
to someone
bill.
who
It's
comes-
not in the bill.
not
There
in
is
the bill.
there is no subsidy. There's no
There's
support.
something built into this bill. We had
There's
a few of the other
1%.
sponsors on there, and it actually took care of some of the social issues like the addiction
There's
problem.
1% that goes to
1%.
Health and Human Services
Right.
only. If you
For
have
addiction,
1% of $45 million is $450,000.
How much do we do now?
1%, we spend a hell of a lot more than that.
Do you know how many gaming addicts we have in the state right now?
There are estimates. I can't tell you exactly. There are estimates in the low four figures.
So do you think we're going to increase it that much?
The estimates are that they could rise probably to around 12,000, and that's from the expert that Green Meadows has hired. Yes.
And what do we use for money to support those that are in that position now with no gaming?
Well, as I say, when you have in the low four figures, you're talking about under 10,000. You have to take care of them with the budgets that we have and, and the funds that we have available.
Well, to answer Senator Stiles, we have no support for gambling. We have no support for gambling addiction, for alcohol and drug addiction. Rhode Island, which
and
has
this
two
would.
casinos.
This casino would put it
minimally.
in.
Yep. Let me just mention a little thing about Rhode Island. They have two casinos down there, and casino money was spent on supporting and financing a very high quality addiction treatment program for gambling. What did the legislature do in Rhode Island this last summer when they hit a budget crunch? They zeroed it out, one of the best programs in the country. So all of these things in this bill, because the money is going to come in so much less than projected. It's going to come in at a half or maybe a third of what's being projected. And the next time there's a general fund crunch, like Representative Hess said, these dedicated funds are going to get sucked into the general fund. And all
even
of this,
if that happened,
it
where
will
would they
happen.
get the money otherwise?
Yeah.
Yes. Where would they get
Where
the
were
money
we
out
gonna
of?
get that money
because
anyway?
you would not have the cost of these additional addicts. You would not have
Sure
the
we
criminal
are, because
justice
they're only
cost.
35 miles away.
Right.
Somebody's going to drive there anyway.
But
And if New
but
Hampshire doesn't put
impacts-
one in, Massachusetts may put one
in
just on the
Methuen.
southern border.
no one's proposed it yet, thank goodness. They haven't proposed it
What
yet.
happens
thank
if they
goodness,
did, though?
but they would.
Theoretically,
What
since
is,
we're
what is
talking all
going to happen
theoretically.
is if we do put one in Salem, Mass will put one in Malden.
That's another problem.
Within 3 years,
That's
I
another
guarantee
problem.
you.
Yeah.
And the rule of casinos, unless you are really top of the line, unless you're Foxwoods
Right.
or Mohegan Sun or Atlantic City or Las Vegas, the people go to the casino that they are closest to.
Well,
and can get
again,
And that
I
brings
think we went back to
competition, so.
people traveling to southern New Hampshire. I've seen it growing up in the town of Salem, that people will come to buy their clothing, cigarettes,
They're gonna be here
alcohol.
anyway.
They're gonna come here anyway. Even if you put it in Malden, it's gonna happen.
Well-
But I want to ask you a quick question. I mean, the town of Salem had a non-binding referendum whether they wanted to accept a casino or not. It came back at, I think it was
82%.
82%.
Right.
Both politicians, you got to respect that the people had a say. What do you say about that?
This is a very important thing. The people of Australia were very much behind having casinos, and now they're nationwide. See, this is addressing Senator Stiles' issue. We can have just one. You can't have just one, because the pattern in states and countries that have become dependent on these, here's 3 states in the U.S. since 2007, the revenues of casinos, because the industry is a declining industry, the population interested in sitting bleary-eyed in front of a slot machine for hours is declining. It's all over 50. And states that become dependent on this revenue find themselves forced to allow more and more of them in. You wind up with slots barns in tacky locations all over the state. There is not a single state in the United States that has been able to keep it to the initial promise of having just one.
You know the
Not a single
legislature. You know
state.
the legislature in the state. It would
I
have
do.
to. It would have to approve more than the one that we
It
have.
would. And the legislatures in state after state, once they become addicted to the money, and the money is going down year
Well,
after year,
And
they
Now,
they
in
know
this
that
bill, it's
they
5
know
years,
that the
too.
revenue will
No, it's
will
not.
only support 2.
It's 5 years
bill-
before they renew.
No, it's 10 years before they
10
renew.
years.
But
Right.
this bill also creates, and let me ask Senator Stiles why. This bill creates a study commission to look at and to report about additional sites for casino expansion within 2 years after the bill is adopted. If you're only going to have one casino, why have a commission that is exploring other sites to have a casino
perhaps-
in order to license them and locate them there 2 years after you pass the bill?
Perhaps it is to confirm your theory that we can't support more than one.
But then don't charge them. Don't charge them with looking for additional sites.
No state that has ever gone down the black hole of having a casino and becoming dependent on the revenue has ever stopped at the initial number of casinos. And you're not in the state going to wind up with more casinos like the first one. You're going to wind up with progressively tackier and tackier, smaller venues.
That will be up to the legislature to
Up
do
to
that.
the legislature, but it's the legislature that has made that initial very tough choice to legalize them. Once that choice is made, no legislature in the country has been able to resist the pressure to keep the revenues flat by adding more and more of them. It's a declining industry.
If you're just
I mean,
barely
this
have the votes
legislature
to
has
get
made
this
some tough
passed.
choices in the past couple of years. I feel very confident that the legislature that is
But why
elected,
is
the
this
legislative body that is elected will be able to make tough choices in the future.
Let me just point out one thing. If a casino comes to Salem or anywhere, it is going to be the single largest taxpayer in New Hampshire, the single largest taxpayer in the history of the state of New Hampshire. It will provide for almost 2 or 3% of the total state revenues. Now, do you think if they come back to us and say, we need more venues because we can bring in more money, if we expand or you expand, that a legislature that is now dependent upon one taxpayer for a percent of the state general fund is going to say no?
But it's a
I don't-
user.
I
It's not
don't-
it's not a tax. It's people that are
it
going
is a
to
tax.
It's a tax that
Well,
it comes out of the New
gamblers are
Hampshire
paying
But
economy.
if you're not
Yeah.
going to gamble, you're not losing any money out of your
Gamblers are
pay.
paying it.
Yeah, but the family of the gambler is being hit. The
And it's still
restaurant-
going to be hit because it's only 35
But
miles
it's
away.
away.
It's
Yeah, but
not nearly,
this is
not
an
nearly
important
the
thing.
extent.
This is a very important thing to understand. The money going into a casino depends upon people who are the closer you are to a casino, the more likely you're going to put money into it. It's like a supermarket. If you have a supermarket right down the road, you're going to go to that supermarket because it's close.
Well,
when you have
I
a
can
casino,
tell you,
Well,
I can
I
tell
would-
you, I had a dog track that was just down the road from me, and I never went there at all.
well, it wasn't very appealing
know.
at the time because they were a declining, dying industry.
Well, you know,
It was busy at one point.
At
It
one
was-
point in the
at
past.
one point, it was busy.
At one point in the
Yeah,
past.
You
it
know,
was.
we live in a society nowadays where people will wait in line for gasoline and around the block for 2 cents a gallon off.
Yeah.
So here you are saying they're going to go what's closer. I don't believe that's true.
Every analyst of gambling, both the supporters of gambling and opponents, and all the students of it agree with that. There's no disagreement.
no
on that.
disagreement.
If that's the case, then they're going to go to the local charitable gaming ones. They're not going to drive down from Berlin
But
to
local,
Salem
local charitable
every
gaming,
other day.
Local
That's
charitable
true.
gaming.
If you don't have it in Salem, charitable gaming will still be viable in New Hampshire because Suffolk Downs is 30 minutes from the border.
But if you have it in Salem, the charitable gaming will still be available throughout New Hampshire. And people are not going to drive down from Berlin to Salem every day. They're going to go to the. You can't even.
there's no-
David, you can't even find a parking place
Nancy,
at the
there's
charitable
no gambling
gaming.
parlors north of Belmont.
Well, you can't even find a parking space at the charitable gaming in my
That's
district.
good, and I
They
think
had
that-
they bought a golf cart to transport the people from the parking lot all the way up.
And that's wonderful because that gives our charities a source of revenue so that they can.
And they
can
will
give-
still get
this-
it.
No,
They're
they won't.
guaranteed to get it under this
Yeah, but
bill.
that's not the case because when the legislature, two reasons why it's not going to happen. Number one, charities that have new needs or growing needs are frozen out totally. The whole charitable gaming operation is going to be wiped out. That hold harmless thing will last for a while until the legislature needs the money or the gambling casino
But if
operator
we're gonna-
says,
if we're gonna
we're faced
argue-
with this pattern of declining
I'm going
revenues.
to argue that
Yeah.
gaming is bad. How can we say it's good for charities, but it's bad for casinos, especially, so the state makes it or the nonprofit makes it?
Because it's a difference between the type of gamble. We don't have slot machine gambling. This is why there's such a big fight over this thing. We don't have slot machine gambling in the state. It's a very different, far more revenue producing activity than charitable gambling, because you play once every 4 seconds.
Right. But in the bill, it talks about what the payouts are from these slot machines.
Right.
And I believe it's 90%.
90%.
So 90 cents on every dollar has to come back.
So it's not like the gasoline you're talking about, because the gambler has basically the choice between where to go to play slot machines is going to depend upon which one is closer and which one has a greater basket of amenities, flashier hotels.
But don't people go to these casinos for entertainment? I mean,
That's right.
That
All
too.
of, all of the baby boomers who are retiring,
and
that's
that's why
what they use.
Verizon is very concerned. That's why every nonprofit theater in the state, including the Portsmouth Theater, including the Palace Theater, including the Concord, the Center for the Arts, including the theaters,
Well, why
in
would
Keene,
they- I would-
are
They're tiny
opposed to
compared.
this thing because the competition they feel could wipe them out.
well, as a good Republican, we all know that good competition is good.
good business.
And it's going to bring more people and more entertainment into this state.
I'm a constitutional Republican.
Yeah.
And in our New Hampshire Constitution, Article 83, it gives the people the right to free and fair competition in the trades and industries. I'm quoting almost pretty close to verbatim.
Pretty close.
And what this bill does, when you read it, it hands out a monopoly to one business. And the bill is written so that only one business can even get the
And
monopoly.
I'm really
This
glad
is
you
the
brought
mon-
that. I'm glad
Yeah.
you brought that up,
Yeah.
because there's another bill
Yeah.
that the House actually tabled. It was HB 678.
Right.
I think.
I was a
Valencourt.
co-sponsor on that one, too.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different.
Right.
I'm not saying that's good or not, but that's not a monopoly.
We defeated,
so now
defeated the Valencourt bill. The Valencourt bill was a bill that provided for the state ownership of the casino. And
But 6 locations.
no, well, yes, 6 locations,
So
but it was
now-
state ownership. It wasn't private licensees. It was
Right.
the
But Gené's
casino
was-
was owned by
Gené's
the
was
state.
two.
Gené's was
That's the
two.
one I
That
was
But
on.
I hear that all the time from a lot of Republican friends that they don't like it because it's a monopoly. Well, then if you take 678 and you've got 6 different areas getting the casino,
Yeah, but that's
are you
the-
now
the
for
state
it?
o-
The
The
state
state
owns
owns
them.
it.
See, it's not picking a business.
It's not a
Well,
monopoly.
they're paying.
So that means that we
a
pay labor
license fee.
costs and we pay all of the other associated costs
Under
with the state
Valancourt's
owns
bill,
it.
the
Like the
state
liquor stores,
owns and
yeah.
operates the casinos. The only person the only private entity that would have any portion of the proceeds would be private entities that the
That run
state
it.
could contract with to run it.
Okay.
And the difference is, instead of Millennium keeping 70% of the take
Yeah.
and shipping it to Las Vegas, instead of keeping it in New Hampshire, the state gets to keep 70% of the take if you have publicly owned casinos. And I think what you would hear if you asked people who were on the border of casino-style gambling, which would you prefer? Universally, they'd say, let's go the state way. Let's keep 70% instead of just 30%.
Yeah. I mean, we know that's not going to happen
I
because
say
the
let it go to
government's not
business.
going to support that
And
anyway.
we heard all this when public service was up for sale, and you know, there was talk about the state should take it over. Why should we allow all them profits to go to Connecticut utilities?
Well, I was there in the Senate at the time. I started the process of deregulating utilities in the state. A bill that I started wound up getting passed, so now consumers have choice on which electric company they choose to buy electrons from. And that has led to competition. And it's been tough on PSNH because their prices are on the high side. But we in our legislature, in our state, consistent with our Constitution, move in any way possible toward giving consumers choice, giving free enterprise the opportunity to compete to provide the better product and service.
Well,
Right.
This bill, this 152, identifies a single company and hands a monopoly
Actually,
to it.
I don't believe it identifies any
No,
company.
it doesn't.
No.
It's written so that only Millennium.
No, if the-
Representative Hess testified. The two competing companies have testified. There's no way they have a shot.
Well, then they missed the boat. That
They
should
didn't miss
have
the
been
boat because the
looking-
bill isn't passed
How did
yet.
Millennium all of a sudden get
Well,
this?
Because they wrote the
Let's-
bill.
let's-
Because
They're
they have had an option to purchase Rockingham Park
Yeah.
for, I think, 7 years.
Yeah.
They saw this as a potential. They have the cash flow that they can invest $10 or $15 million in upfront money on the risk, the potential of having access to the market and having a preferential situation. These other folks don't either. I don't know. I talked to them, but for whatever reason, maybe they can't raise the money. Maybe
Well,
I know Green Meadow is a small family-owned golf course.
Do we want somebody who can't raise
Raise
the
the
money
money?
taking on
the point
such a
is,
project?
once you have a bill, and once you develop the regulations, then they will come because they know what the playing field
That
is.
kind of sounds
They
like
know that the
Pelosi's whole idea on passing the
Pelosi?
budget.
Who's Pelosi?
Pelosi for passing the budget. You have to see what's in it.
Well, of course, if you're going to apply for a license, wouldn't you like to know what information you have to give and how much money you have to invest
I mean,
before you start spending money?
if you want a fair shot,
I think it
at-
says right in here how much
Yeah.
money you have to invest and the money you have to come up
But
with for
we
the
haven't
background
passed this
checks.
yet,
Yeah.
and it can be amended.
If
In
you
fact,
wa-
there will be I guarantee you, there will be amendments to
House
change those
amendment.
numbers.
if you want a fair shot at handing out the monopoly instead of giving it to one company, the way the bill is written around is clearly, and as Dave heard the testimony yesterday, the competing vendors have no way of getting a proposal in. If you want a bill that creates a fair shot at competitors proposing, you will. I'm against the monopoly, but if you give time for competitors to shape proposals, you will see better proposals come before the state. I don't understand why proponents of this bill don't want to give time for more entities to amass the capital, understand the rules of the road, and put forth a proposal. And the reason for that, and there's a very simple reason, because the governor wants $80 million of that license in the current budget.
biennium.
In the current biennium, they have to recklessly rush the process so fast that only one company can even bid, and so that the license is issued before the state's regulations are even drafted and finished.
The House
It's a
budget
dangerous
doesn't
situation.
include. The House budget does not include gambling.
And the Senate budget won't either.
Which is the point that, as you made
Then
the
there's no
argument,
need
we
to
don't
rush.
need the money.
Then there's no need to rush. There's no need
But
to.
we don't.
it also
You're
won't
saying
fund
the state
it.
of New
It
Hampshire
also
does not
won't
need
fund
the
the
money.
things that
I'm
you
saying
want to
we
fund.
crafted a budget. Did you vote for it?
No, I voted against
Okay.
the.
I thought it satisfied essential state needs that could be met with the revenue flow that we had, consistent with no income tax, with no sales tax, and it restored some funding that we had to cut dramatically 4 years ago because the Democrats, when they were then in control, had inflated spending 25% in the previous 4 years. We brought that under control with some very tight fiscal policies 2 years ago, and now it's ramping up ever so slightly. But a budget was passed by the House without casino gambling that satisfies essential human and state needs.
But did it have the gas tax in it?
It did
No.
not.
It didn't?
No.
The gas tax was a separate bill.
That's a separate bill that we just show.
Right, that goes back to the 93 widening. We all know Southern New Hampshire is the economic driver, and we need to get 93 done. There's no question about it, up to the airport. So how do we get that done? If there's no federal dollars, again, we have two choices, either the gas tax or a casino bill. I don't see any other way of doing it. The interest rates are historically low. Maybe that's one of the reasons why it's the time to do this.
There is another idea, and this is not the subject of this program,
Sure.
which I hope the legislature will give a look at, which is the idea of burying the transmission line to get Hydro-Quebec power down to Connecticut. Connecticut ratepayers pay it.
Northern Pass here?
Hydro-Quebec pay for it. Is this a Northern Pass thing?
I'm not even touching that.
You're not going to touch that.
Yeah, that's very
It is a
unpopular.
I favor it because it avoids a scar down the face of the North Country.
Yeah.
It gets the state would get the money. It's $60 to $80 million a year, money that comes in stable, consistent, because people are going to buy electrons for
And
a
then
long time.
what, are we going to raid that fund too? It's
state
the
get-
same.
the
If you're using that
That's
philosophy,
dedicated.
it's the
That's
same.
another show. That's a whole other show.
Okay, well that money would probably go to the highway, because the highway department, it would bury it along the
On the
I-93 corridor, the highway department, and then you'd have a guaranteed, locked-in, constitutionally locked-in revenue flow to improve all the bridges and roads in the state. Plus 20% of that money goes back to the towns and cities for local highway assistance. So this is something the legislature can't raid, and instead of the PSNH picking up the $60 to $80 million bucks a year, the highway fund of the state of New Hampshire picks up that money. There is another idea out there.
Well, that's an additional thing maybe we should do. But
It's an idea, and it's a
It is a
heck of a
lot
lot
better.
I want to get back on the whole,
Yeah,
this
right,
whole,
right.
our show here, and one of the things that was brought up was the moral issues of gambling. And there's a lot of people that say gambling morally is wrong and we shouldn't do it. But we are a state that has.
I have no issues on moral aspects of gambling. So
Well,
you're talking to the choir. It doesn't interest me at all. I see nothing immoral about gambling, and I don't think Jim does either. So you can move on to another subject because we don't care about that.
So if there's
Actually,
no moral objections to gambling.
So what is your biggest objection?
Law enforcement,
that.
quality of life, unknown and uncertain revenue stream, proliferation guaranteed.
There's no guarantee in here for
There's
proliferation.
it's expanded, Nancy, in every state.
single
that-
state.
But we're New
Every-
Hampshire. We're not every
But we're
state.
Well, then we don't have to follow Massachusetts. This is the first time.
we can
this
miss
is
the boat.
This is the first time in my 30-plus years of public service that I have heard
that's
New
right.
Hampshire people say, if Mass is doing it, we
Right.
have to do
Well,
it.
just keep in
No,
mi-
I
keep
heard
in
it
mind-
last year.
But keep in mind,
That's right. But this is the first issue.
who's the first state to institute the lottery?
Right.
Well, sure. Well, actually,
So we're
Ireland.
leading on
Ireland.
What state has what state has liquor
Actually,
that's in the liquor business?
The United States of
about
America.
14.
Are there?
To pay off the original debt from the Revolutionary War, we had a lottery, and we paid off that debt, and then it went away. But there's another problem with this gambling, and I'm going to come back to the moral question. I got to start there because that was your question.
Yeah.
The Granite State Coalition Against Expanded Gambling, our website is noslots.com. Part of our membership are almost every faith organization in the state, from right to left to center. And there are moral concerns among people. And it's not that, when people say moral, well, they're against gambling. Let me try to describe it in a way that many of the faiths think about it. If you do something in public policy, like implement slot machine casinos, you know that 60% of the revenues that go into the slot machine casino, if it happens to be in Salem, come from gambling addicts. And we also know from the science of studying other states and countries that have done this, that when you become a gambling addict, you need more money than you can afford. And what happens is you increase debt in the family, you increase divorce, you noticeably increase child abuse and family violence, you increase embezzlement, you increase crimes against innocent citizens. And it's immoral for the state to make a public policy choice that is very well recognized and known to create those problems that are imposed upon our neighbors.
And it's immoral for the state to be selling alcohol, which
Well-
probably causes more of those issues.
Let me answer that too, because we
That's another
tried.
show, too.
Let me answer that because we tried banning alcohol in the 20s and 30s.
Well,
and
not
look what
banning
happened.
it. I'm just saying the
We
state
did.
is actually promoting it. It's on our highways.
Well,
We have liquor stores
I'm
on
going
our
to tell you,
highways.
I like to go out to Las Vegas every couple of years, and I play. So I never became a gambling addict.
It's a small fraction of people who have a problem with the slot machines, but it's 60% of the revenues going into the machine that forms the basis for the tax you're talking about. So the question for a legislator is, do you want a tax to build 993, for example, that requires family violence, that part and parcel of it, hand in hand?
How long have you been taking care of the world, Jim?
I'm reflecting, you have to think about the impact of policy. When you make policy choices,
This is what a significant percentage of the people that are in the coalition are concerned about.
I'm
From the
representing
Catholic
concerns,
Church,
yeah.
Catholic Church on the more conservative side to extremely evangelical churches on what I would call the more liberal spectrum of religion, and they are involved and they're unanimous. I don't know of any organized religion that supports casino gambling.
not a
in New
single
Hampshire.
one. And it's because people,
But they use the charitable gaming to support some of their entities.
because the charitable gaming does not create these problems. It does not. It does not
Okay.
create. You have to.
I think
we're
we brought that
actually,
point. We've got 5 minutes left.
Yeah,
so what I
we're
want
running.
to do
We're
is
actually
I
less
want to
than 5.
afford
That was
our
about a minute ago, but we're having so much fun here.
We're having a lot of fun, yeah.
let's afford our guests the last 5 minutes.
Yeah,
so
we'll give you a couple of minutes. Well, we'll give you about a minute each to close up on this, and we'll start with Jim. You might as well start.
I'm going to start
If
with.
he starts, Nancy and I will never have time.
No, I'm going to be short. I'm not going to try
Hold
to
you to it. The clock's ticking.
I'm just going to say two things. You got to look at both sides of the balance sheet. You're going to look at the taxes coming in. It's a gambling tax that comes out of the economy, and some people want more taxes on the economy. I'll grant them that. I don't. Some people do. You've got to look at the other side of the balance sheet. There are costs associated with the tax, and when you do the balance sheet, the costs are greater than the revenues. It's a drag, net drag in the New Hampshire economy. The wrong thing to do. And I'll just,
All right, now
and
you're
I
going
conclude.
now you're going into David's time.
No,
so.
no, this is one short thing. 3 states, because the
Never
industry,
short.
the gambling industry is in decline in all states. It's a declining industry, and 3 states are now subsidizing the casinos in their state. Taxpayers are being asked to reach into their pocket and buy slot machines for the casinos in West Virginia. And I won't talk about the other 2 states. They're subsidizing them now in Connecticut, the federal taxpayer, and they're subsidizing them in New Jersey now, because the industry is a declining industry.
Okay, David?
Well, Jim's taken all my time, as I told you he would.
Most part.
I think the most important thing to do is, if you're seriously talking about casino gambling, you have to do it the right way, or you're going to get in a lot of trouble. Law enforcement trouble, social trouble, economic trouble. The Governor Lynch's commission on expanded gambling in 2010 consisted of over a dozen people from across the spectrum of casino, advocates for, opponents of. They came up with 5 recommendations. The 4th recommendation, and the most important one, and I'll read it to you. New Hampshire, and I quote, New Hampshire needs to review its regulation of gaming with or without an expansion of legalized gambling. To ensure integrity and public confidence, this review should be completed and necessary changes implemented before any expansion is enacted. Senate Bill 152 does exactly the opposite. It authorizes a casino and expanded gambling, and then says, and by the way, after we do this, we'll get together and draft the regulations that we need to properly control it and oversee it.
Well, I'm going to have to cut you short, so
there's
Nancy
no
can
reason for that.
get a word in here.
Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you for inviting me in.
You're
And I
welcome.
do hope that the House will look favorable on Senate Bill 152, because I think it's been well vetted. It is non-tax revenue. It provides jobs. It provides for the local community that hosts it. It does the one thing that I requested is that the local community would have to vote to host it, because the district that I come from, that's a very important piece. Some of my communities didn't want it, others did. So to me, that was very important. It does that. It has continued. It spends money on roads, bridges, higher education, and provides money for any issues that might arise from gaming, which I think are overinflated. So non-tax revenue, jobs, bring it on.
Very good.
Okay, well, this has been the Legislators Lounge. This is our 5th show, second on gambling, and I would like to invite anybody that might be interested in watching this or passing it along. We have a website. It's derrylounge.com. You can find all our shows on there. We also have a YouTube channel and a Facebook page. And thank you for being on the Legislators Lounge today.
And thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.